Should vaccines be made mandatory in the country, or will that infringe on people's rights? Well, there seem to be different views on this, but according to Begisiza Center for Health Journalism, 2 laws can be used to make this legal. These are the state of disaster regulations and the notifiable medical conditions regulations. Both are said to allow for a person to be compelled to take the COVID-19 jab. Well, for more clarity on this, I'm joined now by public health lawyer Safura Abdul Karim. Safura, good afternoon. Welcome to the Media View. Thank you very much for your time. So I'm just thinking, as I was reading this introduction, do regulations trump the Constitution? I mean, if somebody says, I have constitutional rights in terms of my beliefs, my religion, these regulations won't apply to me.
So I think it's very important to recognize that the South African Constitution's rights and the Bill of Rights that it contains are not unlimited. In fact, Section 36 specifically contemplates under which circumstances rights may be limited. And so the 2 laws that you referred to are laws that do limit individual rights. And the constitutionality of that limitation has been tested in various ways, albeit not with regard to the COVID-19 vaccine. But what we have seen is that public health measures to control the spread of COVID-19 have justifiably limited things like a right to freedom of religion, a right to freedom of movement, and other things. So it is possible for these types of regulations to justifiably limit your constitutional rights.
Therefore, you can use the same legislation or regulation in terms of what you've just explained to say, go and get the jab.
The regulations that you've described are very specific. They apply to individuals. So it cannot be used to say at a population level, everybody between the ages of this and this must be vaccinated. It only works on a case-by-case basis where somebody has been identified specifically as needing to take the vaccine, is refusing to do so. Then these provisions can be used to compel that person to be vaccinated.
So you can't apply, you can't apply them in a blanket fashion. That's what you're saying.
No, currently the laws that are in place don't allow for a blanket vaccination scheme. That doesn't mean that one can't be introduced. And we're seeing various companies, private actors, introducing these types of mandates as policies in their workplaces, for example. In other countries, we're seeing similar sort of blanket restrictions being applied to places like restaurants and gyms. So it is possible to do it. These laws are not the pathway, though.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about what about other rights as an employer, and I guess if you're an employer of people who are in the front line dealing with customers, front desk, you'd want that front desk personnel, so to speak, to be vaccinated so that you don't lose business. Customers can feel comfortable walking into your space, so you will have to sit down with them. They would have to have very good grounds not to want to take the jab.
I think you've hit it on the head. When it comes to vaccine mandates, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Whether or not somebody can be forced to take a vaccine for their employer's sake really depends on two or three things. The first thing it depends on is how much risk are they posing to others and how much themselves are they at risk for contracting COVID-19. So people like healthcare workers, frontline workers at grocery stores, they are a very high-risk category. The second question that an employer needs to ask themselves is, what is the reason this person is choosing not to take a vaccine? If they can't take it for health reasons because, for example, they're immunocompromised, that's a group of people you shouldn't be forcing to take the vaccine. But where somebody doesn't have a good reason, then you could argue they should be forced. People who are objecting on religious grounds are a little bit in a gray area. It's not clear whether their right to freedom of religion trumps the public health interests in the case of vaccines.
I guess they would have to provide some kind of evidence that will taken into account. In this case, it's a bit of a difficult one. But under what you said, some places are doing this. Some companies are in their company, they're changing their policy and stuff. Can the country change its policy? Because from scientists, we keep on hearing that this is the first of many many to come, yet to come, pandemics. I mean, the last one was 100 years ago. This one, when I spoke to a scientist a few months ago, said scientists have been expecting a pandemic for the last 15 years, thinking it's coming, it's coming. When SARS happened, they thought this is it. When the swine flu happened, they thought this is it, but it wasn't until COVID-19 hit the global shores. So is there no argument legally today to try and change this and say, let's protect the bulk of the population, understanding that there could be some minority exceptions? Couldn't we be arguing for something that will be a blanket approach legally?
I think without a doubt, and you know what you've described is this field of pandemic preparedness that has really been in place, you know, and people have been advocating for more strongly over the last 2 decades. And so we do need something that's a bit more sustainable, that's not so specific to COVID, because what we've seen a lot of is this kind of COVID exceptionalism, where as things are happening, we're trying to catch up from a legal perspective. But without a doubt, the infrastructure is in place. At the moment, government has indicated that they are not intending to make vaccines mandatory. And that may be partly informed by the fact that we don't have enough vaccines to vaccinate the whole population. When vaccines are truly freely available to everyone, it could be that the government changes their policy position, and then the law would definitely allow for them to consider introducing a vaccine mandate. Again, it would need to be something quite nuanced. It would need to take account of groups of people who cannot be vaccinated for health reasons, possibly taking into account religious reasons for not getting vaccinated. But overall, there shouldn't be a problem from a legal perspective with introducing some type of vaccine mandate at a population level in South Africa.
Thank you very much for clarifying. Public health lawyer Safura Abdul Karim. That interesting indeed. So there you have it, case by case. There are regulations that can make this enforceable. But of course, if you have good grounds and you can produce the evidence of why you should not, then of course you just might get away with it. But the risk to the institution, to the organization, trumps sometimes individual preferences. I guess they're going to be dealing with this case by case as we move into the future.